The story, according to Mark. It was now 2 days before the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to arrest him by stealth and kill him. For they said, "Not during the feast, lest there be tumult amongst all the people." And while he was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at the table, a woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard, very costly. And she broke the flask and poured it over his head. But there were some who said to themselves very indignantly, "Why was this ointment thus wasted? This ointment might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor." But they reproached her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing for me. For you always will have the poor with you, and wherever you will, you can always do good to them. But you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests in order to betray him. And when he heard it, they were glad, and they promised to give him money. And then he sought an opportunity to betray Jesus. Now on the first day of unleavened bread, when they sacrificed the Passover lamb, his disciples said to him, "Where will you have us go to prepare for you to eat the Passover?" And he sent 2 of his disciples. And he said to them, "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him. And wherever he enters, say to the householder, 'The teacher says, where is my guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large upper room, furnished and ready. There, prepare for us." The disciples set out, and they went to the city, and they found it just as he told them. And they prepared the Passover. And when it was evening, he came with the 12. And as they were at the table eating, Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." Now they began to be sorrowful and to say to him one after the other, "Is it I?" And he said to them, "It's one of the 12, one who is dipping bread into the dish with me. For the Son of Man goes, as it was written of him. But woe to that man whom the Son of Man is betrayed by. It would have been better for him had he never been born." Now as they were eating, he took bread. He blessed it. He broke it. And he gave it to them. And he said, "Take, this is my body." And he took a cup. And when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank of it. And he said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly I say to you, I shall not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God." And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Now Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Now Peter said to him, "Even though they all fall away, I will not." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I say to you, this very night, before the cock crows twice, you will betray me 3 times." But Peter said vehemently, "If I must die with you, I will not deny you." They all said the same. And they went to a place which is called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And then he took with him Peter and James and John, and began to be greatly distressed and troubled. He said to them, My soul is sorrowful, even to death. Stay here, watch with me. Going just a little further, he fell on the ground and he prayed that if it were possible, that this hour would pass from him. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible to you. Take this cup from me. Yet, not what I will, but what you will. And then he came, and he found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Couldn't you watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is weak, but the flesh is weak. And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And again he came, and he found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy. They didn't know what to answer him. And then he came a third time, and he said to them, Are you still sleeping? Are you taking your rest? It's enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. And immediately, while he was still speaking the words, Judas came, one of the 12. And with him, a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, The one whom I shall kiss is the man. Seize him and lead him away under guard. And when Judas came, he went up to Jesus at once and said, Master! And he kissed him. And they laid hands on him and they seized him. But one of those who stood by drew a sword, and he struck off the ear of the slave of the high priest. And Jesus said to them, Have you come out against me as a robber, with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I was with you in the temple, teaching. You didn't seize me then. But let the scriptures be fulfilled. And they all forsook him, fled. Now a young man followed him, with nothing but a linen cloth about his body, and they seized him, but he left the linen cloth and ran away naked. And they led Jesus to the high priest. Now all of the chief priests and the elders and the scribes were assembled. And Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. He was sitting with the guards and warming himself by the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council sought testimony against Jesus so they could put him to death. But they found none. For many bore false witness against him, and their witness did not agree. Some stood up and bore false witness against him, saying, We heard him say, I will destroy the temple, and it was made by hands, and in 3 days I will build up another one not made by hands. Yet not even so did their testimonies agree. And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you? He was silent. He gave no answer. So again, the high priest asked him, Are you the Christ? Are you the blessed Son of God? And Jesus said, I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with clouds. of heaven. And the high priest tore his garments and said, "Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard his blasphemy. What is your decision?" And they all condemned him as deserving death. Some began to spit on him, to cover his face, and to strike him, saying to him, "Prophecy." The guards received them with their blows. And as Peter was below in the courtyard, warming himself by the fire, one of the maids came to him. And seeing Peter, she looked at him and said, You are the Nazarene, Jesus." But he denied it, saying, I neither know him or understand what you're talking about. And so he went into the gateway. And another maid saw him and began to say to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." But again, Peter denied it. And after a little while, again, the bystanders said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them. You're Galilean." And he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know this man of whom you speak." And immediately the cock crowed twice. Peter remembered how Jesus had told him, "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and he wept. And as soon as it was morning, the chief priests with the elders and the scribes and the whole council held a consultation. And they bound Jesus. They led him away and delivered him to Pilate. Now Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so." And the chief priests accused him of many things. And Pilate again asked him, "Have you no answer to make? See how many charges they bring against you?" But Jesus made no further answer, so much so that Pilate wondered. Now at the feast, he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison who had committed murder during the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he was wont to do for them. And he answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests and the scribes had delivered him up. But the chief priests had stirred up the crowd to have him release for them Barabbas instead. So Pilate again said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man who you call King of the Jews?" And they cried out, "Crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has this man done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him!" So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the masses, released for them Barabbas. And having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. The soldiers led him away inside the palace. That's the praetorium. And they called together the whole battalion. They clothed him in a purple cloak, and plaiting a crown of thorns, they put it on him. And they began to salute him. "All hail, King of the Jews!" They struck his head with a reed. They spat on him. They knelt down in homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple cloak, put his clothes back on him, and then they led him away to be crucified. They compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus. They compelled him to carry the cross. And they brought him to the place called Golgotha, which is the place of the skull. Now they offered him wine mingled with myrrh, but he didn't take it. And they crucified him. And then they divided his garments amongst themselves by casting lots for them to decide who would get what. And this was the third hour when they crucified him. And the inscription of the charges against him read, King of the Jews. And with him they crucified two robbers, one on his left side, one on his right. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, "You would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days? Save yourself! Come down from the cross!" So also the chief priests mocked him to one another with the scribes, saying, "He saved others. Can't he save himself? Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down from the cross that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him derided him. Now when the 6th hour came, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Now some of the bystanders hearing it said, "Behold, he's calling Elijah." And what? One ran and got a sponge and filled it with vinegar and stuck it on a sprig of hyssop to give it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let's see whether Elijah will take him down from the cross." Jesus uttered a loud cry, and he breathed his last. And the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood facing him saw that he had thus breathed his last, he said, "Truly this man was a Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.